Now these two distinctions, the persuasion and force, I want to touch on a little bit, because this is where you get a distinction between what is referred to as evolutionary socialism versus revolutionary socialism. Evolutionary socialists, such as the progressives, the Fabian socialists in England, and others that came up during the 19th century, believed in an evolution of the social order and the progression of this, that's why they call it the progressives, through the changing of individual consciousness. And so they worked with the school systems, the religious, the institutions of ideas and values in order to bring about this change in consciousness. Because they believed it was possible to bring about this idea through an evolutionary process. The revolutionary socialists, although they neglect that, never had any pretensions that it was going to come about this way. They knew from day one that eventually it was going to take a violent overthrow of the existing order. And so that's the difference between Nazism and communism on the one hand and the progressivism on the other hand, is that it's not so much that they have a different end view, it's how do we get there. There is a revolutionary violent overthrow of the existing order, or there is an evolutionary slow change from one order to the other. So that makes up the distinction. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about this gap and bridging the gap. In the Judeo-Christian notion, understanding, we recognize the potential that human beings have as being created in the image of God, but we also recognize the reality, and it's something that is referred to as sin. And the term in the Hebrew text, as far as I understand it, refers to a separation between man and God. And in Romans, the Apostle Paul is referring to this separation when he talks about, in my innermost being I delight in the law of God, but I find another law in my members at war with this, because I don't do the things that I want to do, but I do the bad things that I don't want to do. So he's talking about this inner struggle that's going on. So there's the Judeo-Christian understanding recognizes this gap as well. But they also said this is not something that can be bridged by force of human will, or by him. This is something that can only be bridged through this relationship with God and the repairing of this relationship in God. That's why with God. That's why there is an understanding in the Judeo-Christian tradition of walking the path of restoration, to restore what is lost. And more particularly in the Puritan tradition, they refer to what is known as regeneration. The regeneration of the individual's nature. Because of this separation, our nature was corrupted, the whole social order was corrupted, and it's only going to be repaired through individual regeneration, which regenerates society. Whereas on the other hand, the utopian view sees the regeneration coming about from the top down, socially engineered. They actually believe that you can change human nature by socially engineering, because human beings are supposedly a product of socioeconomic forces. And if you can gain control of the levers of social and economic forces, then you can socially manipulate the society and change individual human nature so that you have the perfect society. So one view sees this change coming about by regeneration of the individual. And this regeneration from the individual into the families, to the churches, to the society, creates what classical liberalism is referred to as a spontaneous order. We talked about this earlier. The other view is that this problem is human selfishness, and they don't want to socialize, and they need to be socialized in this social engineering top-down approach. And if you have the best and brightest in charge, then you can socially engineer the perfect society, and you can overcome this gap between what could be and what is by socially engineering the problems out of existence. Now, I want to now touch on an essay that was, beginning of the year, maybe end of last year, in National Review. It was called John Dewey and the Philosophical Refounding of America. And this is, he talks about the rise of the progressive movement, who took some of these ideas that were percolating in Europe. As you recall, a lot of these ideas, the ideas of liberty went from America to Europe, and they were influencing Europe. Now, as you start to get into the second half of the 19th century, there's a reversal. There's ideas that are percolating in Europe and they're coming to America. And these ideas are socialist collectivism. So there's a reversal. The second half of the 19th century, you see an academic, intellectual, moral reversal of this spread of ideas. The direction from America to Europe is reversed, and also the nature of the ideas is reversed. So these, you hear, if you listen to the Glenn Beck show, you're going to hear a lot about the rise of the progressive political movement, starting with Woodrow Wilson. That's around the turn of the century. But progressivism started as an intellectual movement. It started around the mid-19th century. So there was half of a century of percolating the progressive ideas before it became the political movement he's talking about on the show all the time. And so this is, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And this is a quote from this article. And he's referring to how this thing got started in America. It began with a conscious rejection of the natural rights principles of the American founding and the promotion of a new understanding of human freedom, history, and the state in their stead. From this foundation, the progressives then criticized virtually every aspect of our traditional way of life, recommended reforms or social reorganization on a sweeping scale, the primary engine of which was a new and positive role for the state. Now again, the primary engine of their vision was a new and positive role for the state. Now I'm going to go into that word positive in just a second. As the progressives' influence in the academy, and started in the university system, increased, the growing numbers of their students sullied forth into all aspects of human endeavor. Went in social gospel movement, religion, progressive education movement, you name it. They infiltrated the civil rights movement into practically every aspect of human endeavor in order to enculturate these ideas into our society. This intellectual transformation gradually began to reshape the broader American mind, and in time, American political practice, it shaped our thinking first, but then it started to shape our political practice. So finally, he says, a new regime in thought, as Eldon Eichberg writes, became a new regime in power. So the shaping of our ideas eventually shaped our politics. So they created a new ideology, new value system, which led to political power. So this is why I've often say that the political arena is a lagging indicator of the cultural arena. That you have to win the war of ideas before you can win the political battle, and this is what they did. This is the reason why they've been so successful politically. It's because their premises, their ideology, their belief system has been enculturated into our society. And so that when political debate takes place, it takes place on their terms. And this is something that has to be countered. You cannot fight the battle simply on a political level. Now, I want to talk again about this, the term positive. This is a positive role for the state. There is a notion we talked about in the introductory session about one of the conflicts that we have domestically in our political debates is over the meaning and implementation of our ideas of freedom. And we use the example of the healthcare debate. On one side, views it as an expansion of government, which is a threat to our freedom. The other sees healthcare as a human right, so therefore the government has responsibility to provide it. This, without being stated, is the difference between what is referred to as negative rights versus positive rights. Our Constitution, in the natural law tradition in which gave rise to our Constitution, recognized the responsibility of the state to enforce what is referred to as negative rights. And were negative in the sense that they restricted what the government could do to you.